The Diamond Valley Chamber of Commerce and Turner Valley Ratepayers Board winter event. And it's not too winter, it was more winter when we started planning it, but anyways. We'd like to thank our local town councillors for making the effort. Thank you all for being here. Those of you that are. Councillor Gordon, feel free to join us. We are thinking we're going to try and record this event for future posting on our YouTube page. Just so you know, just so if anybody's real embarrassed, don't stand up at the front.
I'm a little embarrassed. I got a face for radio.
No, you're good. You're good. 100%. So I also want to thank a few people here before we get going. I'd like to thank Dale Carr. He's been in charge of the setup. Thanks, Dale. Beth Carter for helping with promotions and getting us this fine venue. And I'd like to thank the Valley Neighbors Club for hosting us for this fun evening. I'd especially like to thank Richard Brotherston, the president of the Diamond Valley Chamber, for helping with promotions, and one of our most favored members of the Diamond Valley Chamber for posting this on his big LED sign. That's Blackie, David Lawrence, over at the hotel. So it's kind of fun to pull up there at the stop sign, look up and see our Turner Valley Ratepayers Board flashing up there. And also the town staff for putting this event on their online calendar. So it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guests. And I made this up, so if they want to correct me, I'm not going to be offended.
What's he going to say?
Sara Noyes is currently the president of the Okotoks Chamber of Commerce and has served there for several years in various positions. She's done a number of these interviews, which I've always thought were excellent, and she was kind enough to join us here tonight. She's also recently become the executive director for the Community Futures for Highwood. So Sara's in our community helping businesses and working with our local business community to help advance their efforts. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Anybody know what anybody who doesn't know what Community Futures is, it's run by Western Economic Development. That's where the funding comes from, and then we have a local board, and Sara is their executive director. And tonight we have a special guest with us. That is Mr. Sigurdson. And Sara's going to do a bit of an interview and a conversation with our MLA. And straight off his profile, RJ was born and raised in rural Alberta. He has worked in the oil and gas industry and has built also a career in project development. Happily married with 3 children, RJ and his wife Leanne, who's here. Hi Leanne, do you want to stand up and wave? No. are active and engaged throughout our region, and it's my pleasure to turn the time over to these two. Sara?
Thank you.
Can you hear me in this? Or yeah? Okay. Hi. And
Hi,
hi everyone. Thanks for having us. It was a pleasure to be asked to do this. I hosted both the provincial and the federal election forum in Okotoks because that's the chamber's role. So I grilled the candidates before they got elected, and then have had the pleasure of interviewing RJ and John Barlow actually since then at Okotoks Chamber events, and I suppose that went reasonably well, and so here we are again for 2.0, and hopefully it goes as well, but we'll see. You can tell me in an hour or so or however long we last here. So thanks for having us, certainly, and welcome. It's lovely to see you outside of a hockey rink.
Thank you, Sara. And 2.0, that's right. I guess before we start, I also want to say thank you to everybody. It's great to be home at a session here. We finished our 30th session this year. It's great to be back in the community and to see a lot of friendly faces. As well, I'd like to say Merry Christmas to everybody before we get started. And as well, thank you to the Valley Neighbors Club for hosting this event, allowing me the chance to get out in the community, connect with people, and to be able to hear your opinions, thoughts, views, concerns. This engagement for me is the most important thing I do. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that have given me the chance and put this on this evening. So thank you.
All right, so let's start with a bit of a recap over the last few months. I think the last time we had a conversation, you were super brand new. I don't even think you had actually sat as an MLA yet properly. And you've been very hard at work. How's the balance between living in Okotoks and living in Edmonton? And how has that piece been in terms of transition in your world?
Well, I came from a business background, so I guess in that the transition was a little bit simpler. To start off, I have an amazing family, and I've got a very supportive wife. My wife is very engaged in the community. She also helps me stay very connected. She's also on the chamber and works really hard there. So she definitely helps me communicate and stay in touch with the things that are happening here at home. My boys are also very supportive, and they have become very engaged in politics, which I'm really excited about. And there is a transition there, of course. We always like to use the term that when I stepped up there, it was like drinking from a fire hose. Things moved also really fast. We have a premier that understood in a caucus, a full caucus, that understood that we couldn't wait. Alberta needed help, and needed help now, and that's why we moved into session so quick. So, there was a time it was a little bit chaotic off the start. There's a big learning curve, but I would say that I'm a part of one of the most amazing caucuses I've ever seen. Diverse, the skill set, the people that sit within our caucus, our executive council, all of our ministers and associate ministers, they're amazing people. It's a team atmosphere, and we've helped and shared with each other, and we've managed to be able to take that learning curve and shorten it. So on that transition end, it's really helped me along. Once we've got through what we call in our first year the honeymoon phase, which is probably over, moving into the next year, I feel very confident in what we've done in this past year, the pace in which we're doing it, the issues that we're addressing. I'm really looking forward to next year, and I'm really excited about the way things feel with our caucus, our team behavior, and that stems all the way down from our premier. I've never seen such a hardworking man in my life. He doesn't micromanage. He gives everybody responsibility and roles, and we're approaching this on a team effort. This is not a top-down driven government, and I think that's why things are moving the way they are, at the pace they are. And I'm really, I would say, maybe moreover, just in the last 3 months, I've really found my voice. I found my fit. I think I know where I fit in this caucus, and I've been getting more and stronger as we come along here in making sure that the issues and the things that affect Highwood, that we're not going to have those unintended consequences, and I make sure that my promise is always fulfilled, that I'm going to take the issues of Highwood and make sure they're heard in this government, and that's one of the things I'm going to continue to strive to do over the next 3 years.
So I'm gonna obviously get to the issues of Highwood, certainly, and I think largely they're provincial issues, and they're shared with the rest of our province. But tell me more about what you feel your role is, and where you found your voice, and where in that caucus you feel like you fit, and that you've been given an opportunity to contribute.
Well, I think one of the things that I realized is, first of all, I can't know everything about everything. And that's why we definitely lean on each other as a caucus. We have that depth of knowledge throughout our caucus. So as we've gotten to establish relationships with each other, we've definitely opened up our phones. I'm a construction guy. I worked on a drilling rig. I'm the only, what I say, rig pig that is in caucus right now, so we joke about that, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the oil and gas industry in this province, and I'm really happy to stand up for it. With that, my skills and trades background is a huge mandate within this government, so I have stepped up onto a special caucus committee that is dealing with skills and trades development. And one of the biggest honors that I've actually had this year, which was something that actually really took me back a bit, was when I was approached by Minister Schweitzer, when he actually came to me and said, and he'll probably hate me for saying this, but he said, you know what, I'm a downtown lawyer. I live in Calgary, and I don't know anything about rural crime. I think we got a great enforcement, great system, but I live in the city. And that's when I looked at him and I said, okay, well, what do you want? And he said, well, I want you to be a chair on this rural crime committee. I need your perspective. I grew up on a farm. My family was victims of rural crime numerous times. We used to think our gas pumps had a sign on them that said free fuel. It happened so much, and then it escalated to a point when I was in my teens where we came home and our house was completely cleaned up. So being able to sit on that committee, having something that was personal to me, was something that I could really sink my teeth into, something that I was very passionate about. And with that, I've been working very interactively with the Minister of Justice, Minister Schweitzer, and I can't say enough about the way that he's approached this issue, the thousands of people that he's connected with in the rural crime town halls that he's held all across this province. And I think Bill 27 was a real strong reflection of what happens when you have a minister in a government that goes out there, gets in front of the people, truly listens, and doesn't just listen, but actually takes that and makes it legislation. And I think Bill 27 for me was it was a very happy day. I was very proud to speak to Bill 27 and support it all the way through the House, and as well with the development end on that, bringing that bill to the surface. So as I continue with that, it's finding the things that you're passionate about. We have, like I said, with that diverse caucus, we have all of our passions. So with the rural crime, the skills and trades, and the oil and gas background, I've really tried to focus in those areas. And we have, within a government, been able to break things up. Ministers have broken off parts of their portfolio, engaged private members, and that's why I will say this is a government that doesn't govern from the top down, and there is no such thing as a backbencher anymore. I don't know of a member in this government that isn't working on a critical piece of legislation or policy or regulation to move forward to help improve this province, because everybody's very passionate about getting this province back on track.
Bill 27, I feel, happened fast, swiftly, and made a huge difference in Highwood, because we had a couple of issues here that were significant and in the media, and it made a big difference for our residents immediately, I feel. So, it's a nice job. However, let's go right into the fire with policing and the police model that you're bringing down, because I think that that's one of the issues in Diamond Valley that is going to change the way, change taxpayers, change taxation, change the funding model. So, that hasn't been terribly popular, let's call it. So talk us through that and that decision-making process, and just what exactly happened there and what the implications are for these communities.
I'm not going to dive into the model too much because the model is very complex. There is exemptions, of course, to the rule, but definitely over the next 3 years, this is a plan to be able to gauge all the municipalities to be partners in this. The one thing we identified going across the province was one of the critical areas is the fact that our rural policing hasn't grown in decades. We don't have additional police officers. And one of the things I'd like to start saying is a lot of people have come back to me and said, you know what? I'm not happy that you offloaded this onto the municipality. You know, why did you offload? You should be paying for this as a province. And I looked right back at them and I said, well, where do you think we get our money? From the taxpayers. And with this, having it as controlled by the municipality, for the first time when everybody's contributing, for the first time in Alberta, every single municipality, whether they're under 5,000 or whether they're a county or an MD, is going to have a seat at the table as we establish and we decide how this policing is done. This model as well, when I break it down, everybody likes to talk about the big numbers. Foothills County, I calculated it. And I said, when I broke it down in rough math on how we're calculating it, I went up to a farmer and he kind of said the same thing. He was a little concerned, and I said to him, if I told you right now that your taxes are going to go up $65 this year, but it was going to build 300 additional RCMP officers, and there's 200 back staff that doesn't get talked about in the media that we're also building, technical, data, task forces to be able to organize these 300 we're adding to it, to be able to build a team in behind, so we're directing RCMP and targeting. And I said $65 this year and $65 next year. Is that an investment that you want to do? This particular person had been a victim of rural crime multiple times, and he looked at me and he went, "It's $65? I said, "Yes." And he said, "Absolutely, I'm on board." I can't think of a better way to spend $65. I know we hear about the big numbers, but I wanted to break it down so everybody gets a little bit more of a gauge of what it actually is going to be for them and the impact over the province. We cannot get on top of this unless we have additional boots on the ground.
So is this all about solving rural crime, downloading these payments onto the municipalities? Tell us the impetus for the decision that led to that.
Well, there was it was from the consultations across the province. I mean, the biggest thing we identified going over and over and over again, it was a theme. It was just a constant theme, and no matter where you went and what corner of the province was, what's your biggest issue? I dial 911, I wait on the phone, and they say RCMP has been dispatched, and they show up 4 hours later. That is not reasonable to me. That's not reasonable to anybody. With that is when we looked at it and we said there's only a couple ways we can address this, and more boots on the ground is one, and then as well, by extending the mandate of the sheriff's department and of course conservation officers as well. I will say a lot of times RCMP can get backed up on other calls, but by extending the mandate of the sheriffs and the conservation officers as well, those are people that are already out on the highways, they're already out in the rural areas, and when these calls come in, we can decrease the time because people need to know that there's somebody there to help them. We're running into stories over and over again where people are honestly looking at us and going, I pull out my shotgun and start shooting, and I don't dial 911 anymore because I've lost faith in the system. Now, to me, that's serious. That's a serious issue. And when it comes down to a balance of looking at what I would call, it is an increase to municipal taxes, and we understand that, but this is a critical issue. We have to find a way to get people feeling safe in their homes in the rural community again. This is something we can't ignore anymore. It's not going to solve itself. And the reality is it's going to take more manpower. It's going to take more boots on the ground. That costs money, whether it comes from the municipality directly from the taxpayers, and which I think is a better design because the municipalities will finally have a seat at the table to be able to chime in on how they feel the rural enforcing should be directed, or whether the province itself pays for it back. We just have to increase taxes as well to pay for it as well. So either which way, it's going to cost taxpayers money to do that. We thought this was the best design. That was the business plan behind that. And I don't see it as offloading. I see it as the fact that it's a reality of the situation. It takes more manpower, it takes more resources. That costs money, but we have to do this. People are not safe in their homes. This is critical.
And are we sticking with the RCMP model, or are we going provincial, or is there a plan for that yet?
At this time, I'd be lying if I said we didn't hear that at a lot of the town halls across the province. At this point, right now, we're sticking with the RCMP model. We're going to be adding more RCMP into the mix, into the province, and addressing the situation. And then, from there, like I said, at this point, there is no official move to a provincial-only model.
You guys were really clear when you got in that the financial situation was it $45 billion worse than you thought it was going to be? You thought it was going to be 19 and it was end up 62, or
well,
rough math?
Well, it's actually far worse than that. So, yeah, just the news you want to hear, right? So to put it in perspective, when we stepped into office, we ran into a couple things that really were detrimental, especially in this first year. You'll hear the NDP talk about the fact that we're running a larger deficit than we did last year. I will agree with that. $2 billion of that was because they over-projected oil revenues. They were projecting oil revenues at over $70 a barrel. It was the most ridiculous assessment I've ever seen, especially the way that oil has been going in a limited capacity and the fact that they were in curtailment. It wasn't even realistic, and we picked up $2 billion there. The other $1.5 billion that the NDP doesn't want to talk about was the fact that this rail by crude, which was a disaster, and it was a assessment by this government that over the next 4 years it was going to cost taxpayers anywhere from 3.8 to 4.5 billion in losses, or we offload the contracts now and it costs us 1.5. And this is a part about what we talked about in the election that I try to remind people about, that when Kenny called this out, Jason Kenney called this out, making deals like this on the eve of an election to buy votes moving into election are terrible. We paid double for the loading contracts. We paid double for the lease on the cars. This is a terrible way to spend taxpayers' money. And it was a balance of get out of it now, or it's going to cost us over 2.5 times over the next 4 years. So we made the collective decision to take what we thought was was going to hurt the least and get it over this year and exit out of those crude by rail. So that's a part of the deficit situation that we ran into. And right now, like I said, at $60.4 billion is what we took it over when we assumed government. And right now it's sitting at roughly just over $65 billion. And to put that into perspective, that's roughly about $5.2 to $5.5 million a day that we pay on interest payments to foreign banks and bondholders. And we actually pay more now in Alberta on interest payments than we do 17 of our 21 ministries.
So you had to make a plan to correct that. I'm assuming you're still making the plan because there's a long road ahead. And one area that has been affected has been the public sector. And we immediately saw 300 teachers get laid off in this big audit of education, and the public service in that sense are furious. Is that a fair word?
Quite fair.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure we're on the level.
Maybe mildly understated.
Yeah, okay, mildly understated. Yeah, okay, so furious. Talk us through that issue and why, like, you've got 3 kids, we want to hear, like, why our kids, and I'm not telling you that you slash teachers, because I'm not saying that was the intention, but why that first, that was not a popular maneuver. Was that calculated?
Well, that was a part of our platform. We said, and I want to be clear when I say that, when we said that we were going to hold the line, $8.223 billion in education, we said in our platform, we were very clear on this. We were transparent right before the election, We were not going to increase the education budget. We need to hold a line. We spend more per capita on education here than any comparable jurisdiction. And we said we're going to maintain it at 8.223 billion. We've maintained it at 8.223 billion. Now, there are some subsidy grants on class size reduction and that have been removed. And the reality that I want to state with that is these grants and these initiatives are meant to address an issue, and they're not meant to be permanently in place. Now, we don't feel they were addressing the issue. Class sizes didn't drop. We still saw an increase to class sizes. And the money itself, in a lot of ways, we didn't feel was actually being addressed in the way it should to be able to deal with that. We have to do austerity measures. What we have right now and how we keep funneling money into, thinking the answer is always more money, is not the case. When we look cross-jurisdictional, and what the McKinnon report brought up was how we're paying so much more for education than comparable jurisdictions, and it's time for us to realize that we need to be partners in this with our public sector workers, and that's what we're asking for, and that's what I keep saying. As a province, I don't want to be in a war, private sector against public sector, government against public sector. Everybody's got to realize we're all Albertans. We're in this together, and the province is drowning. And we need everybody to recognize that. We need everybody to realize that, and everybody to be working in the right direction for that. When we went to the education sector, we asked them for austerity measures. Can you improve, to put it in perspective, CBE, though they use the big number, $33 million, that represents 2.4% of their budget. 2.4%. I've been in business. I've been able to find 2.4% in savings, and the last thing I did was lay off the critical people on the front line that are doing the work. And I think they're addressing it wrong. I don't agree with the union mentality of last in, first out. And I think they need to look at the way they're doing things slightly differently. And that is why the audit came down. I don't agree. I stand behind our Minister of Education when she called them out by saying, you know, listen, this is the budget that you're getting, and the first thing they did was, we're just gonna axe 300 teachers. I don't feel they even really looked at how they're managing their administrative fees, anything they can do. I've heard stories of buildings that the CBE is running leases on, millions of dollars a year, and these buildings are empty. What are they doing about that? And this is a part where it was time, as a government, we stood up and said, you know, everybody needs to be in this together, and everybody needs to be working in the right direction in order to be able to address these issues. And hopefully, and I know this is going to be a battle, and I see it as a battle, but I want to keep saying over and over again, I appreciate absolutely every single teacher. I've got 3 kids of my own. We have friends that are teachers. We have teachers. We appreciate everything they do every single day. But we're all Albertans. We all have to understand the way this province is sitting right now. We all have to tackle this together in order for this to work.
Noted. And to be fair, I think the private sector has taken its fair share of the hits in the economy that we've seen. So another big piece that you're trying to solve is the red tape in business, which excites me. What does that mean to you? Because I think that means something different to everybody. So that's my first, I sort of have a direction I want to head there, but what does that mean to you in terms of fixing business, small business in this province?
I think when you look at red tape reduction, and of course we've got an associate minister, Minister Hunter, that's taking this on. It's as much of a mindset as it actually is a removing of regulations, and understanding that the biggest hurdle we have, whether it's I use oil and gas as kind of a linear example when we talk about red tape reduction. The reason nobody is investing in oil and gas in Alberta is because of things like C69, C48. The amount of time and expense it takes to even try to get a project done without a guarantee that it'll actually get done. And that's why we're not seeing the investment in oil and gas. We see the same thing in small businesses. Small businesses struggle to get off the ground, and sometimes for them it's even more critical. The money they have in the bank is very finite. So the time it takes in which for them to actually get their business up and running is a huge hurdle for them. And we need to find a way to shorten that. When we talk about regulations, we definitely want to be able to maintain safety and maintain the standards in which we're doing things. But we have to find a way to be able to react from the municipal level all the way up to the provincial level to ensure that we're trying to make the path to get a business started, to assist our job creators, to allow them to be able to move forward. We need to find a way to take that away and shorten that timeline as much as possible. We need to open doors for them and not close doors and put hurdles in their way. We have to change the mindset and realize that we're here to assist them. And the same thing on the provincial level with our municipalities. We've done it to our municipalities. The hindrance and hurdles. I'll use water for an example. Minister Nixon took over AEP, Alberta Environment, and when he took over AEP, the time in which it took to get a water license transfer was averaging over 400 days. 400 days. And this is just one small example that in a matter of less than 8 months, he's now reduced that approval to on average between 45 to 48 days. Okay, these are the things we need to focus on, and we need everybody to chime in small business and continue to approach and recognize those hurdles and communicate those hurdles. And that's why I will say my door is open on those issues, because I want to be able to address those in any way, shape, or form I can, whether it's on a municipal level or provincial level, to be able to assist our job creators, because we need them more than ever right now.
So one of the things business owners, or would-be business owners, hear all the time is you can't do this here and you can't do that here, and because of this, and oh my gosh, no, that's a no, and this is going to be a no over here too, and that's also a no. And our local administrations take the hit for that, and in turn they blame the provincial frameworks and legislations for that. So is your intention to change the provincial framework and then tell the municipalities that they have to get in line as well? Because we on the ground are affected by what happens in the municipality, and we don't necessarily see what happens at the provincial level, right? But the people that are working defend themselves, is that the right word, or rely on saying, well, these are the guidelines I'm given, I kind of have to stick by these rules. So how's that going to be fixed to allow business owners, because like the average business